won't remove content within 24 hours. So they will respond, particularly if they're breaking a law or if there are heavy fines to go after it. And those are all things that, we are taking into consideration as we think about how we would move forward. The challenge again is, there are already regimes in place with regards to broadcasting, with regards to advertising, with regards to news that we accept, and there are standards that we say, this is something that you can put on TV, this is something you can't put on TV, this is something that you can publish in a newspaper, this is something you can't publish in a newspaper. We have, until recently, accepted from social media that they are different. And I think we're now coming to the realization that they are much more the same than they are different. But we have to think thoughtfully about how we would create a regime that would be technology agnostic. Because what we don't want is to create a regime that's looking in the rearview mirror and missing what's ahead of us on the highway.
Like deep fakes.
Yeah.
No, and it's fair. Like we've regulated speech forever. Like the oft-quoted example in law school textbooks is you can't walk into a building and yell fire, right? We've always regulated speech, but what's different this time around is that the fundamental role that technology is playing in our life, and that blurring between the public square and the private space. But no, that was a good question and a difficult one.
And I think that's really important because what you post on social media is so public to everyone. But sometimes you think you're just talking to your friends, right? Or, this question of like messaging versus public post. Like there's a whole bunch of things that are different, but are the same as well. And so how do we manage that? Like it's different for me to write you a letter and send it to you and share some things that maybe, are not acceptable, but it's different for me to stand on a street corner and say it, right? And that's kind of this challenge that we have with the platforms.
Please.
I'm just going to ask a quick question because I was, not to date myself, born and raised in a time where the internet did not exist, social media did not exist. And I think as we are trying to find out a way to perhaps moderate or sort out what's real information or not real information, what I want to hear and what I hear from constituents often is, can we have confidence in our democratic institutions? When it comes to the way we vote in Canada, which is still a paper ballot, do we need to be concerned, or are there measures in place to ensure that the outcome will be determined by Canadian citizens, whether it be in a riding or a province or a country? I know comments have been made in regards to leadership races, and political parties have chosen different ways to vote within their own entities. But when it comes to a country where we're still using the paper ballot in the 21st century, can we have confidence that the outcome will be credible to what people asked for?
Yeah, excellent question. So I often get razzed as the youngest member of parliament who is against online voting. But it's because we have a really good system of paper ballots. And actually, I have a lot more confidence in the outcome of the election in paper ballots than I would online. And talking with a number of counterparts around the world, the Netherlands, for example, went back to paper balloting because they didn't have the confidence that online voting would result in the confidence of the outcome of the election. And for me, democracy is based on two things. It's based on the trust in the process and trust in the outcome. And those are the two things that we should always be fighting for and working to protect. And I think with regards to paper ballots, we can have confidence. And I would also say that we have Elections Canada, which, in my humble opinion, take it for what it is the premier elections agency around the world, and administer our elections very, very well, and we can be very confident in their ability to do that. the domestic shenanigans that we have come to know too well and not too far from this area. Robocalls was a thing, but in this updated Elections Act, we have empowered the Commissioner of Canada Elections to go further in their investigation and go further in their ability to enforce what are very robust laws. And I think that's really, really important. So, making it harder for any actor, domestic or foreign, to do things that would not uphold the integrity of the election is another important thing that we did.
Plus, not even the Russians have figured out how to hack a piece of paper. So, well, our last question will go to my colleague, Stephanie McClellan, who's actually a cybersecurity expert. Please, Stephanie.
Hi there. This actually segues quite well, because that was going to be my question, is to what extent is the new protocol going to be looking at domestic versus foreign? Because one of the biggest problems right now is groups that are organizing to try and spread misinformation, and they're not necessarily state actors, but they could just be people who are ideological or strongly pushing one side or the other, or just trying to mess things up?
That's a great question. So the protocol is strictly with regards to foreign interference. There are some occasions where the cybersecurity agencies may not have clear line of sight as to whether it is foreign or domestic, but they may have an inkling that it is foreign. There could also be cases where a foreign actor is using a domestic actor to get their message across. But CSE does not look at Canadians, and so it would only really be specifically with regards to foreign interference. Domestic actors are already governed by the Elections Act, and if there is suspicion that they are doing things that are illegal, please report it to the Commissioner of Canada Elections. But at the same time, there's a difference between mis and disinformation. Misinformation is me believing something and telling you what I think it is, but it's wrong, right? Disinformation is a concerted attempt to try and obfuscate the truth and to try and confuse you. Disinformation could be sending out information through a coordinated campaign to tell you that your polling station has moved and to try and interfere with your ability to vote. That is illegal. And we now have the tools in place to enforce that in a way that I think will give people confidence. But we also have to recognize that one of the trickiest parts about cybersecurity in our elections is that often foreign adversaries use legitimate domestic issues to try and foster division. And there are, a lot of issues in Canada that are polarizing, that are divisive, that people are on different sides of the spectrum for. And but they have a legitimate right to voice their opinion and to share information on that, and we don't want to discourage or not allow them to do that, but also have to recognize that that's exactly what foreign adversaries are looking for, to try and amplify those divisions. And so it's a really tricky issue, and one that we have to walk very carefully, and one which is it's unfortunate that our foreign adversaries have tapped into it, because it could be quite effective, as we have seen. Thank you.
I've got one last question, because we are running out of time, but this has been a fascinating conversation. Before I ask it, I'll just let the audience know about two upcoming events that we have. On Tuesday, April 30th, we're actually going to be filming a movie, or screening a movie in this auditorium called Netizens, and actually it's apropos to our conversation because it delves into the lives of three women whose lives have been transformed by online harassment. So that would kind of segue into this idea of content regulation on the internet, and that'll be followed up by a panel of local experts here that are going to discuss some of those issues. And then on the 14th, which is another Tuesday, we'll have Evan Burfield here. We're going to partner with the U.S. Consulate to talk about the startup culture and innovation in healthcare, infrastructure, education. So my last question. It's a bit of a tough one, and it's open-ended, and it's quite purposefully so. When I think about the content of our conversation tonight and all the things we've touched on, it really strikes me like what we're dealing with is the governance of technology at a fundamental level, at how we as a society, as a people, as a nation, as a country, as individuals interact with technology. But I almost feel like it's happening to us. It's happening so quickly that I wonder this out loud. How can we purposefully build the society we want with the fundamentally increasing pace of technological change? It's a nice light question to end the night.
It's a really great question, and I will start by answering it with an experience that I had here at CG. I mentioned at the outset that I had a roundtable on technology and democracy. Well, you guys hosted it actually, and I was invited to it. And we were having a really engaging conversation, and at one point, this guy just walked in and sat down. I don't think he was invited. He just happened to be roaming the halls, and he sat down. And at the end, he came up to me, and he said, "I'm so glad I walked into this room." And I was like, "That's great. Who are you? What do you do?" And he said, "I work in AI, and I have not once stopped to think about the ethics of what I'm doing. And the reason is because I'm trying to be faster, I'm trying to be more efficient, I'm trying to innovate, I'm trying to be one step ahead of everyone else. But I've never thought about the implications before." And that conversation has stuck with me the whole time, because I think that we have limitless possibility when it comes to technology. But we have to make some decisions at some point as a society about what the things are that we're going to accept and not accept. And deep fakes is a really good example of this, because never before have we had something that could take me or you, take my voice, my mannerisms, my face, and manipulate it in such a way to not be able to tell if it's me or not. And that's concerning. And we have to decide if that's something that we accept or don't accept. It's really cool to have David Attenborough narrate my wedding video. But what does that mean with regards to how we trust information and how we make informed choices? And so I think we're at this moment where we have to make some of those decisions. And I think that now is the moment, because technology is only going to accelerate, and we have to set those parameters before it sets them for us. And it is fundamentally going to change how we as a society operate. So I'm fundamentally a very optimistic person, and I think we can do it. And I think we've actually decided what a lot of those standards are. As I mentioned before, we're okay with this on TV and not okay with this on TV. So I don't think that it has to be totally out of this world. We just have to make some decisions about what that governance will look like, and how it won't be just reactive to today's technology, because things are going to change, and we need to set those parameters moving forward.
That's great, and that's a great place to end it. policy choices and governance choices are inevitably a series of trade-offs, a series of counterbalances, but it's always this idea that we're trying to make the choices for the betterment of society. So I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking our speaker, Minister
having
Gould.
me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful having you.
Yeah, thanks. That was great. That was a lot of fun.